morning, legends. 14 Ks at 4:43 per K pace. Feeling good, actually. This week anyway, has been really good. Achilles starting to get a little bit less niggly towards the end of runs. Hip feeling not too bad now that I've taken time off the bike. Everything's going my way. This is great. Now today we're going to talk about the long run, because the long run might be the most important thing during the week, apart from eating and sleeping and drinking water. But I want you to let me know in the comments below what run you did this morning, how long your long run was, and how fun it was out of 10. And if it wasn't a 10, then explain to me exactly why, because it should be. Welcome 10 at checkout. Now, when it comes to long runs, there are 3 basic rules. And rule number 1 is welcome 10 at checkout to get a sick long run hat. Well, that's partially wrong, but also kind of right. No, but seriously, if you want to master the long run, you need to follow a certain strategy that includes these 3 really important rules. Because if you don't, then long runs, well, they're crap. Now, rule number 1 is super important, okay? Running has to be fun, and the long run is no exception. Even though it's a longer run, there's more chance of it actually being less fun, because you're generally going to end up getting yourself way more tired, and that can be pretty crap. So here's a couple of strategies to keep the long run fun. So how do you make the long run fun? Well, the first thing that I would do is to change up the surface. Whatever you've been running on during the week, change the surface to something else. You know, if you're on pavement, go to some trails. If you're on trails all the time, go to some pavement place, or go to a track, or like just go somewhere completely random that's going to be a different stimulus on your brain, okay? Different inputs from your sensory system that are going to make it interesting and therefore probably fun. Running should be fun. The next thing is to change your surroundings. So maybe you can swap surfaces in the same area, but it's still not quite as fun. Go somewhere completely different. That can also be a good strategy to have more fun. Go to some random place you've never been before and just go run and figure out where the hell all the good stuff is. That's a good strategy. The next one is to not make your long run really hard. With a little asterisk though, of, you know, it has to have a specific reason. Maybe it does have to be hard. We'll get into that next. But don't make your long run really hard by doing crazy hills if you're not used to it, or just clipping off at some insane pace for no reason, okay? It's not going to be fun, and it's also not going to be tied into goal number 3, which we'll get to in a second. But here's something very interesting that a lot of people have figured out, okay? If you're doing something that maybe isn't as fun, but you do it with people who you like, okay, maybe company or friends or whatever, that can make something fun too. So that might also be a strategy that you can implement into this to make running fun and make the long run long amounts of fun. Now, rule number 2 is to not bonk, especially if you're like 4 Ks from where you parked your car. I've done that in the past, right? When I did a really long run, didn't quite hydrate enough and didn't quite, get my nutrition strategy in place. And I had to walk back to the car for 25 minutes. Absolutely not ideal. Don't make this mistake, because that will make running and the long run, once again, not fun. Violating rule number 1, okay? And that's the most important rule. So the way that we can start this off right is by getting a good breakfast in, enough food in your belly so that you're not starving after 5 kilometers, okay? The next thing that you can do, dial in your nutrition strategy whilst you're actually running, because a long run is much longer than the standard easy runs. And so you're gonna have to have some sort of strategy in place. Like this morning, I had 1 gel only because I was just ticking over 1 hour, and it's good to just get into that practice of nutrition strategying. I probably didn't need to have a gel, but I'm going to have one anyway because it's over an hour. That's just my general rule. If I go over an hour in an activity, I always bump a gel or some sort of food, okay? That is my nutrition strategy. The next thing is electrolyte. Like these and like this, okay? Having some sort of electrolyte strategy as well, whether you do that pre-run or during the run, it's up to you. You have to develop a strategy, okay? Because once again, you don't want to start cramping, because you're gonna have to walk 5 kilometers back to your car, and that sucks. Now, I made a video about electrolytes a week ago or 2 weeks ago, or I don't actually remember when it was. It was pretty recently, but when we're doing daily uploads, baby, I just kind of forget what I've made last week. Doesn't really matter, but I'll put the link to that in the description below, okay? That's really helpful. It's going to help you to understand electrolytes, and if you can try and get some sort of sophisticated strategy in place, very, very important. And the last thing is route planning, okay? Maybe you don't want to do an out and back. Maybe you're a loop kind of guy. I know that I've been a loop kind of guy in the past. Sometimes I like out and backs. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if you're a loop person or an out and back person. But if you're doing an out and back, potentially that might mean you have to bring stuff with you or make a little secret hiding spot in a bush like I've done in the past with a drink bottle or some gels or something. That's also a good idea. Some sort of strategy that's going to keep running fun, and it's going to allow you to implement a very good long run into your training plan, because the long run is super effective. And remember, the longer the long run, the more rule number 2 matters, okay? Okay, rule number 3 is pretty important. It is the third rule, but that's because it kind of makes sense to be the third rule in this video. But generally speaking, it's a very important rule, okay? The long run has to have some sort of specific goal, okay? If you're just going out there and just doing whatever, then how do you know if you're having a successful long run or not? It's all dependent on what your goal is. And look, before we get into this anymore, if your goal is to follow rule number 1 and that's it, just go and have fun, then bro, go do whatever you like. That's perfectly fine. For everyone else who wants to have a goal for a specific long run, let's break that down. So in this case, you have to ask yourself, what are you actually training for? For myself, for example, right now, I'm base building and I haven't done anything this week except just easy running. And in the last couple of months, I've also not done anything other than some easy running. So today was to establish what my heart rate feels like at certain paces so I can understand when I do start to do workouts in another 4 weeks' time, what kind of pace ranges I can manage at like a thresholdy effort and a thresholdy heart rate. Okay, so today, all I did was build up until I thought I was around a 4 or 5 out of 10 in that 155-ish range. And as soon as I found that number per K, I just dropped it back off. Nice and easy. That was the goal of my long run. Now, if the goal of your long run is to base build, then obviously you're going to do a nice, slow, long run and try to build that mileage. Okay, that's perfectly fine. And believe it or not, this actually is the same, or in my opinion, it should be the same in a speed block. So you're doing a 5 or a 10K race training block, okay? The emphasis is on the actual sessions themselves during the week, not the long run itself, because the race is not long, and so therefore it wouldn't be specific to do anything other than the same thing as base building, just building mileage in a long run, providing that you can actually recover for the sessions in the week to get the most out of them. That's going to be the most specific to the goals, and that's, you know, rule number 3. So there you go. Where it gets a little bit trickier is in the longer events like the half marathon and potentially the marathon. I can't speak on the marathon because I've never done one, but I've definitely done a half marathon training block, and the long runs are the most important aspect, okay? This is my strategy for long runs in some sort of training block like that, okay? You're trying to build how much race-specific work you can do whilst also recovering enough to still get a little bit of speed stimulus in the week, but also to continue building that aerobic capacity over time in your weekly mileage. So I would use an alternating strategy where 1 week you do a long base building session, okay? That's where you can emphasize during the week doing, you know, intervals and things like that. And then the second week, you can solely focus on a really hard race specific long run. So for the half marathon, for example, you could do, you know, alternating kilometers on and off. You can do like 21 Ks all at some sort of tempo effort, slightly slower than goal race pace. You can do 3 times 5K with a 1K float in between at your goal race pace. You can do all kinds of different training sessions during those long runs, and that's going to get you specifically fit to run long and also run fast, because fast and long is what everyone likes except people that don't like things that are fast and long. I don't really know, maybe speed people, not really sure. So that's my general outline for long runs with my rules, okay? Remember, goal number 1 is to have fun, and so if you're not having fun, change something up, okay? Goal number 2 is to not bonk, okay? Don't bonk, bonking sucks. And then number 3 is to just keep it specific to some sort of goal. If your goal is just a base build, do a big, long, slow, easy long run and just take in the scenery. If your goal is to get faster, maybe just do the same thing, maybe dial the volume back a bit and focus on the track stuff. If it's a longer race, then do longer race specific stuff in the session. There you go. It's very, very simple stuff. I'll see you guys tomorrow for Q&A Monday. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with this strategy or if it's a bunch of bullshit. And if it is a bunch of bullshit, just dislike the video. I don't know. Bye.